all you cool crooks and killers. Welcome back to True Crime Now, your #1 source on the internet for your daily dose of true crime. Even the best detectives could use a little luck when solving crime now and then. Today, we'll be counting down the top crimes that were solved by accident. Number 8. Counterfeit $20 bill reveals a serial killer. In 1979, a bank teller in Kentucky noticed that a $20 bill she'd received looked fake. The bank sent the bill to the Secret Service for further analysis and determined that the bill was in fact counterfeit. Searching the circular numbers on the bill revealed over $130,000 in fake US currency all over the US, but primarily in Kentucky. This sparked a major investigation, and the man they were searching for became known as the mall passer to the media. There was a be on the lookout alert issued to malls and small businesses in Kentucky and nearby states. This led to employees of a store in Knoxville contacting the Secret Service in 1983 when a man fitting the profile purchased a small item with a fake $20 bill. Mall security detained the man named James DeBartolome until police could come and arrest him. But wait, what does this have to do with a serial killer? Well, this arrest led to a search of James's home in an effort to find the printing press he was using to create the counterfeit money. What they found in the home was a lot more alarming than they could have ever imagined. Heinous crimes, including videotapes of rapes and murders committed by James. They also found dozens of personal items from women thought to be victims. Evidence dated back to 8 years prior, but many of the victims still remain unknown. Astonishingly, police had identified a serial killer they hadn't even been looking for. Several of the murders were solved by DNA evidence collected from the personal items, but an unknown number of murders and crimes committed by this man will go forever unsolved, even though they are on tape, because investigators are unable to identify all the victims. James was only tried for 6 murders, but this earned a prison sentence of 375 years. Authorities thought it would be excessive and an unnecessary use of time and resources to continue to try him for additional crimes. What a bizarre break for the policemen who committed all their time and effort to solving the mall passer case. If you thought that was crazy, you won't believe the #1 crime on our list that was solved by accident. Number 7. Kidnapper caught by high school kids. In 1997, a 2-day-old infant girl was kidnapped from a maternity ward in South Africa by a woman posing as a nurse. Before staff and the mother realized what had happened, the child was gone without a trace. After over a decade passed with no leads, the family began to lose hope that their daughter would ever be found. The couple had another daughter a few years after their first was kidnapped, but they never forgot about the baby they only had 2 days with. In 2015, the family's youngest daughter began attending a new school as a freshman in high school. She quickly became friends and bonded with a girl in the senior class, who many agreed she strongly resembled. When she came home one day and mentioned this to her parents, they knew they at least had to take a chance. They asked the girl if she'd be willing to take a DNA test, and she agreed. To everyone's shock and delight, this was their daughter who had been kidnapped almost 18 years ago. She was raised by the woman who had kidnapped her, never knowing she was not her biological mother. The kidnapper was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and the now teenager was reunited with her real family and learned her real name for the first time. The young woman actually still keeps in regular contact with her kidnapper and decided to keep the name she had known her entire life instead of changing it to her given birth name. He is still excited to have the real family back that she never knew she had and build that relationship. Number 6. Missing license plate reveals a serial killer. Ben Rifkin, also known as the Long Island serial killer, is one of the most well-known and feared serial killers in history. From 1989 to 1993, Rifkin would go on a killing spree that would terrorize the citizens of Long Island because he always managed to evade police. At the very least, Rifkin murdered 17 women, but many suspect the true number is much higher. This prolific serial killer went unknown for years and likely could have evaded capture forever if it had not been for one tiny misstep that wasn't even related to his crimes. He didn't have a license plate on his car. This prompted a policeman to attempt to pull him over. Rifkin ignored the cop car and kept driving. This warranted sirens and backup, which led to a high-speed chase. This went on for only a short time until Rifkin accidentally crashed into a light pole. He was arrested by the police officer who had attempted to pull him over, while the backup officers made a truly horrific discovery. There was a young woman dead in the trunk. No wonder he didn't want to pull over. Later that day, Rifkin admitted to 16 other murders and declared that he was indeed the Long Island serial killer. It was like he wanted to make sure he got credit since he was going to prison either way. He had supposedly removed the license plate to avoid detection if someone saw his car at a crime scene. Unfortunately for Rifkin, this was the exact thing that led to his capture. Number 5. Child accidentally solves mom's murder. In 1993, a wife and mother to a 3-year-old boy mysteriously vanished without a trace. Police suspected foul play and were investigating hard into the husband. Their 3-year-old was taken out of the home to ensure his safety. He told a child services worker that night that Daddy hurt Mommy, but could not verbalize more specifics as a young child. As time went on, he was placed with a foster family who eventually adopted him. His foster mother would report to child services that the young boy would regularly bring up the fact that his dad shot and hurt his mom until he was about 5. After this, the topic faded away until the boy claimed he no longer had any memory of that night or his parents at all. The case went cold and the boy grew up. At the age of 24, he inherited his childhood home. He had no memories of this home and wanted to make it his own for himself and his new wife. They began renovations to the old house and discovered what they initially thought was a coconut in the backyard while digging. To their horror, what they had actually discovered was a human skull. The man called police, who discovered much more than a skull. An entire skeleton was unearthed, and the man knew almost instinctively that this must be his mother. DNA testing at the lab confirmed this notion, and his father was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. We're halfway through our countdown and we've seen some pretty bizarre cases so far. But what would you do if you saw someone you thought was involved in a crime, but weren't 100% sure? Would you tell the police? What would you do if you were only 12? Stay tuned for our number 1 pick to find out what happens. Number 4. Job application solves murder. Can you imagine getting arrested simply for applying for a job? That's exactly what happened to a man named Todd Barkett in 2019. The 51-year-old man applied for a job as a nursing assistant that required fingerprint testing be done. This automatically submits the fingerprints to all databases around the country and compares them to those linked with crimes. Instead of getting the job, Barkett got caught. The national database showed that Barkett was the killer of a 68-year-old woman back in 1998. Just to be thorough, police ran his DNA against blood found at the crime scene, and that too was a match. He was later sentenced to life in prison. Talk about worst case scenario when applying for a job. Number 3. Life in prison for a $3 fraudulent charge. While the $3 charge was not the crime that sent Cody Tripp to jail for the rest of his life, it is the crime that led to his capture. In 2012, a 29-year-old woman was found dead in Tripp's apartment. While he was the prime suspect in the murder, he skipped town before police even had the chance to talk to him. He remained in hiding and lived under a false identity for the next 7 years. Tripp was working a job as a mover when a homeowner's wallet went missing. They made the decision to cancel all of their credit cards to be on the safe side and contacted the moving company stating that they suspected one of the movers of stealing. The next day, Tripp attempted to use one of the cards at a gas station for a $3 purchase. The card was declined and the cashier requested to see Tripp's ID. She suspected it of being fake and contacted the police. Police followed up with the moving company and the fake ID and brought in Tripp for questioning. It was there that he was identified as Cody Tripp and was arrested for the 2012 murder. It's pretty safe to say that murderers don't always make the smartest choices. Number 2. A parking ticket identifies one of the most notorious serial killers of all time. Since you're watching True Crime now, I bet you've heard of the Son of Sam. The serial killer, real name David Berkowitz, became one of the most feared and notorious serial killers ever known. During his reign of terror in 1976 and 1977, he shot and stabbed dozens of people over the course of about a year. He also murdered dogs and set numerous fires through this time. He was also leaving taunting letters for the families and police that gained him a lot of media attention. He named himself the Son of Sam and let investigators know that all the crimes were related. Several of his victims who were intended to be murdered miraculously survived gunshots to the head, but were often unable to give reliable details about the incident. This led to misinformation and an ongoing investigation that was no closer to solving the cases than when they had started. That is until a woman came forward in July of 1977 with a strange story. She said she had been out walking her dog late at night when she passed by a man who she stated was walking unnaturally and like he had something up his sleeve. Because his right arm was stiff and unmoving as he walked, she heard gunshots just minutes later and learned the next morning of a double shooting that had taken place just a short distance from her home. Most important detail came when the woman happened to mention that the car he was walking away from had a parking ticket on it. Investigators were able to pull parking tickets from that day to reveal the identity of the serial killer. That's right, one of the most notorious serial killers of all time was caught because he was illegally parked in front of a fire hydrant. Alright, we've made it to number 1 in the countdown. Which one do you think is the craziest so far? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe if you like this video. Number 1. Kidnapper caught by 12-year-old girl. In 1990, a young girl in Vancouver thought her new classmate looked a lot like a girl named Nylene Marshall from an episode of the show Unsolved Mysteries she had seen the night before. The TV show talked about a young girl named Nylene being kidnapped and showed multiple pictures and home videos throughout the episode. The 12-year-old told her teacher about her suspicions, and school officials contacted the police. After doing an extensive background check on the new classmate, they reported that she was not Nylene, but actually an entirely different kidnapping victim. The girl was Mary Ann Kelly, and she had been kidnapped from her mother's home in California by her father over 8 years earlier. American authorities had all but lost hope of ever finding Mary when they got a call from their neighbors up north. Police promptly arrested the father and extradited him to California. Mary was reunited with her mother and returned to her life in the US. Unfortunately, Nylene was never found, but indirectly helped to save another kidnapping victim. Alright, that's our top 10 countdown for crimes that were solved by accident. Let us know in the comments which investigators you think got the luckiest with the crimes they solved by chance. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to see more from True Crime Now. Until next time, don't be embarrassed to sleep with the lights on.